Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thank you once again to our patrons who help make this podcast possible. You guys are the backbone to this podcast. Hands down, you guys rule.
You do, and we are so glad to have you with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now, my wife just wants to know if I can afford to get a haircut. And I told her I'm growing this out. This mop is going to keep growing and growing and growing.
Until what?
Until she cuts it in my
Oh,
sleep.
wow.
The time's
Wow.
coming, she told me.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so this is our part 2 of Pedophiles Among Us. And, you know, it's kind of this big question. What do we do? You have registered sex offenders that are really good at kind of hiding under the radar.
They sure are.
A lot of them are worming their way into churches. I deal with the aftermath a lot when I consult with churches where pedophiles have abused more victims. That happens incredibly often. Then you have the unknown pedophiles, people who are abusing children like, you know,
Right.
like family members that some of you have,
Right.
that we had. They abuse under the radar and nobody knows it, and they do it for decades. And so everywhere you look, all around us, we have pedophiles living among us. So the question is, how do we create a safe space for us and for them? I'm a firm believer that it is not an act of grace for the victim or for the abuser to not set boundaries. That's
I
not an
agree
act of grace to
totally,
either
right.
of them.
No. Right.
And so the best thing that we can do is provide really good boundaries. And we were just going to kind of talk about some do's and don'ts in this episode. And they're not really in any particular order. So here it is. I'll start, and you can interject whatever
Okay,
you
I
want
will,
in here.
yes. And I don't know, sometimes we feel weird doing this, saying we're setting boundaries, and we feel like we're putting marks against a person, or we're labeling them, or we're calling them out when we shouldn't be. But we need to really use caution when protecting our children, because pedophiles and abusers of any kind are crafty, they're deceitful, they're smart, they're looking for that crack in where they can get in, and we need to remember that
Yeah.
at all times.
Yeah.
We really do.
We'll go back in time a little bit. So some do's and don'ts for your young kids or grandkids or whoever. I would say do set some very clear boundaries for them. Teach them safety. Teach them that anybody could be an abuser. Anybody could make them uncomfortable, regardless of whether they know them really well or not. Teach them, inform them, talk to them, communicate with them, leave doors open for them to talk about, their feelings and how they feel after going somewhere. I would say do those things, and do not assume that because your kid is playing with a group of other peers and other kids that there's not an abuser among them.
Right.
Oftentimes, there is peer-to-peer abuse. We had Heather Snyder as a guest for one of our podcasts, and she talked about adolescents who abuse. It happens, unfortunately. And so we kind of have a hard, fast rule that if our kids are going over to somebody else's house, friends of theirs, where they have older siblings, male or female, it's just kind of a hard no. Like, you're not going to go over
Mm-hmm.
and hang out with your friends when they have
Unsupervised and
15,
with,
16
yeah,
year old
yeah,
older
right.
siblings
Mm-hmm.
that are hanging out and playing with you as a group of
Right.
kids.
A
Um,
lot of this is common sense, Jimmy, but a lot of times I was certainly a careless mother with that. Careless with boundaries for your kids. Of course, we lived in a different time when kids intermingled and the abuse wasn't on our radar.
mm-hmm.
Sadly, look what happened right in our home. But abuse was not on our radar at all. You didn't think about
Yeah.
it. You kids rode your bikes all over the place. You went and visited different neighbors. Really, that was among all you kids at that age.
Mm-hmm.
Today we have a lot of ways we can keep tabs on our kids, so to speak. Thankfully so. Keep them safer. But I think you're right with a key word, and that's communicate. If we do not communicate with our kids, don't expect them to come up to us and tell us because chances are they're not going to.
And you have to be
Um,
specific with them and tell them,
Very
like, if
much
anybody
so.
makes you feel
Yes.
uncomfortable, you have a wide open door to come talk to me
Right.
about it. And that can be anything. That can be anything from
Right.
them just, having a strange personality that you just don't
Mm-hmm.
click with to they make you
Attitude
feel
to
uncomfortable.
touching
Yeah, you
to
name it.
yeah, and making them do some, asking them to do something that makes them feel
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. Go alone with me in a room, or this person wanted to take me to the bathroom when the
Yeah.
child is old enough to go to the bathroom themselves or doesn't want anyone with them, anything like that. But key element is always, I think, at every age, communicate. Make
Yes.
sure that you are that parent. And I will say, I do believe I was that parent, thankfully, that you kids could come and talk to me about anything, sometimes too much, things that are hard for parents to hear, but we need to be that person
Yeah.
that our kids come to and that we can easily ask, how was your day? What happened? And by the way, when you went here, here, and here, how was it? How did you
Mm-hmm.
feel? And teach them responsibly, age appropriate, what it means to feel uncomfortable with
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah, I would say too, man, kids are so malleable. They're so exposed to so many different things. I would say
Mm-hmm.
highly, highly, highly restrict and monitor anything that happens on an electronic device.
For sure. For sure.
That is a window
Yes.
into your child's bedroom, very literally, for the whole world to enter in through
Right.
that device. Pornography is rampant.
Mm-hmm.
Pornography now is the age of exposure to hardcore pornography is, I think the average age of exposure is between 8 and 9 years old.
It's heartbreaking,
It's
by the way.
it's
It is heartbreaking to think that.
yeah. The pornography is incredibly violent. I just saw a bulletin go out recently talking about there's such a big uptick in I probably can't say the word or it'll get flagged on YouTube, but non-vaginal sex,
Mm-hmm.
the other
Mm-hmm.
place, if you catch my drift, there's such an uptick in that, like major increase in that doctors are seeing a whole lot of patients for different STIs and STDs,
Mm-hmm.
severe ripping and tearing.
Mm-hmm.
Those sorts of
Yeah.
things. Those are
Right.
those are incredibly common, and that's driven by this genre
Mm-hmm.
of pornography
Right.
that's just incredibly
Among the
violent
very
and
young. Yeah. Right.
it's
Mm-hmm.
bad, and kids are exposed to this stuff at a very young age. So I would keep that on your radar big time. Monitor devices. Be aware of who they're talking to and what they're talking about on those devices. Do checks repeatedly,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say too, have an awareness in case. Keep it in the forefront of your mind that your child could also have a predation towards other children. Get them help.
Immediately, yeah, sooner,
Recognize the
yeah.
signs. If your older kid seems to be hanging around younger kids and putting kids in their lap, and just seems to be violating a lot of boundaries, have some hard conversations with them and find out where you can get help. Because it's incredibly good news if there's intervention, proper intervention at a young age. There are a lot of pedophiles out there now who I could almost guarantee they wish that they had parents who gave them help when they were younger and they needed help, because after a while it's kind of too late.
Also, when we're talking about monitoring our own kids' devices and such, be careful who your children are hanging out with. Get to know those children also, even at a very young age, because the language, what other children have seen, what they experience in their homes, they will talk about. And I've picked up on that just as a grandparent, just by driving kids around, and listening. It's amazing what kids learn on school buses and from other friends at the lunch table, any interaction, sports, whatever. Kids talk to kids. They will
Yes.
share with other kids more openly, or give little hints about what's going on. Or, hey, did you know about this? And your child may be totally oblivious to porn and what porn is, but another child is able to introduce your child and show on their device what's going on. So we need to be really, we need to be 10 steps ahead.
Yeah.
We really do. Really, really
And I would
do.
say along those lines too, be aware that pictures. I know Instagram is like wildly popular right now, and Snapchat probably still is. I can't keep up with how fast
Yeah.
they're all
Me
changing, but
neither, yeah.
be aware that a lot of phone settings have geotags on them, and you can easily go online and find the geotag for that photo and pinpoint the exact address where that picture was taken. So be aware that your kids may be posting pictures and they don't even know it, that those geotags are turned on, and it's stamping every single photograph
Frightening. Yeah.
behind a
It's
wall, and
frightening.
somebody can
Yeah.
click on it,
Yeah.
and they
Frightening.
can get to the geotag on that photo, and they can find your kid. And I got to tell you, this just came to mind. I get up early sometimes, and so if I'm like kind of slurring my words, I'm very tired. I got up at 3 in the morning and started my day at 3. When my wife and I went to bed, she said, "Did you shut everything down in the garage?" And I said, "Yes." We always double check, make sure the garage doors are down. And then the door that comes in from the garage, which is attached, we also lock that
Right.
door. And so we both double checked. Everything was shut down.
Uh-oh,
That
this is
door
going to
was
be
locked.
creepy,
So I
scary.
come in the living room when I wake up, because it felt really cold in there, and that the door to the garage was wide open. And then the garage door, the big car door,
What's
was
up?
wide open.
Oh,
And so the first thing I did is I ran to my daughter's
wow.
room to make sure that she was still there,
Yeah.
because she's on
Oh,
that
wow.
main level.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Wow.
and I asked her, "Did you go out at any time after we went to bed?" She said, "No." So
Wow.
weird, but I know for a fact those doors were shut and locked. So it's that kind of stuff, like it just makes me a little bit on edge, thinking how easy it is for people
It
to gain
is,
access to your
and I
kids.
know to some people they might be thinking, well, you're being a little melodramatic. Does this stuff really happen? Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. Child trafficking is real. Child theft is real. I just read of another case, fairly local, where this happened. And these things do happen, and our job as parents and grandparents is to protect our children, to teach them to protect themselves also. So, the first step is education. And like we both said, it has to be age appropriate. You don't want to scare your 2-year-old child to pieces and where that child is afraid to say hello to someone, for fear of they're going to
Mm-hmm.
be a kidnapper. But we need to educate our kids,
Yeah,
be
for
aware
sure.
that not all people are nice people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, communicate, communicate, communicate. Have that go to person in school, a teacher, a guidance counselor, or whatnot. Have that go to person for, when you're in any situation, a nurse, whoever, that you can go to and say, hey, this really made me feel weird
Mm-hmm.
when so and so touched me on my shoulder, or I felt like he was staring down my shirt, or whatever. Kids need to be able to talk
Yeah,
about that.
they do.
And then we need to know what to do about it beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, Man, this is a big one. Do not, do not, do not, do not, do not put pictures of your kids on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff where your kids are in what could even mildly be perceived as compromised positions. And I say that, and I know I've gotten backlash from blogs that I've written before and said, well, it's, you know, if people are thinking about kids that way, then the problem's with them, and don't teach modesty to little kids. And I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I know the look that pedophiles look for. There are entire YouTube channels, tons of them, dedicated to the quote unquote sexy kids of Facebook, where they go and pedophiles will they'll right click,
Right.
download, save,
It's
and then they'll
easy.
upload
It's
them.
super easy.
Just
It
picture
can
after
be,
picture
yeah.
after picture
Yeah.
after picture of these, little 8-year-olds in bikinis, and they have entire channels dedicated to the sexy kids of
What
Facebook.
we think is innocent and cute in the eyes of a pedophile is much different.
Mm-hmm.
And I cringe every time I see these little girls with pictures posted, and you just scroll through Facebook, and these pictures come up. They're in little pants, no top, and I'm thinking, why are you doing that? Or they're in little halter tops, or little, like you said, bikinis, and a lot of parents even teach their kids do a sexy pose,
Mm-hmm.
do thinking it's cute. It is cute if you're the right person. It's not cute to the
It just
pedophile.
doesn't have a place on the
Don't
public
share.
domain. I mean,
Exactly
it just
right. Do
doesn't.
not.
Those.
And holding a little naked baby, even something as innocent as that, a newborn baby. I die when I see those pictures, because even those
Mm-hmm.
are stolen and used to hype up the pedophile sex addict.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
there's nothing safe. No picture of a child, no matter how innocent. A child, and I've seen this and I heard it from parents, cowboy boots, a little cowgirl boots, a little skirt, and a cowgirl hat. That picture was stolen and reproduced over 300 something times among pedophiles,
Mm-hmm.
because they thought that was a really sexy picture of that child.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful, parents. Don't do it. Do not do it.
Yeah.
Do not post pictures.
And I
You
guess
know.
this leads me to this whole weird Christians defending churches that have this open door policy, and they're like, oh, well, we welcome everybody, and if they're convicted sex offenders, they did their time, and we'll have a policy in place where they can't physically touch kids. Doesn't matter for all those reasons. This is
Exactly,
how they
Jimmy.
think
Exactly.
of your
Right.
children.
Right.
I've consulted with multiple churches that had issues with voyeurism, hidden cameras. These sex offenders would put hidden cameras all throughout the church building. Then they would gather up their pictures and videos. There was one case that was really bizarre. He was using Photoshop, and he was taking video, hidden cameras at church with the videos, and then he would take still shots from the videos, and then he would Photoshop. He would remove the heads of his victims and place them on top of naked bodies that he would find on porn sites.
Boy. Wow. Oh, wow. Wow.
And both his is kind of weird. It was both adults and children, but the level of exploitation and violation
Right.
that these people had. I mean, it was incredibly traumatic for the victims of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Those images sadly get circulated online. Pedophiles will trade those images. It's not just like they're looking at them for themselves in a lot of circumstances.
And
They're being
that's
traded
another
and
thing
sold
which
online.
brings to mind, tell your kids if there's somebody that wants to take 100 pictures of them, that you don't know who this person is, and they're walking along the sidewalk, say, and it happened, two of your children, say they're walking up to the next block to go get an ice cream cone or whatever. Somebody stops and says, "Hey, can I take a picture of you?" Do not let them do it.
No.
Teach them that pictures are huge right now in the industry of porn because they're so easily used. Like you said, you can do all kinds of creative things like them. Do we want to think like that all the time? No, we don't. Truth of the matter is that's the reality of where we live right
Yeah.
now. That's our reality.
Yeah, I mean those are just simple boundaries, though. I mean and with these cameras, it's like one of my church members said the other day. He's like, we could have 100 of those hidden around now. They make them so small.
Right.
He said we could have 100 of them
Right.
hidden around our church
Right.
building, and nobody would ever know it.
Exactly right.
They're
Yeah.
so tiny and concealable, and the
people can-
quality is crazy.
People can put them in your home and watch from their phones. And view them.
I know we were talking about Airbnbs, and he joked, and
Oh, I creep
He's
out
like,
about that.
yeah, he said,
Oh,
you're
I
on
do.
camera when you go to an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like, I guarantee that's so
I
common.
believe it. I creep out when I go to them. Yeah. For that reason, you think people aren't going to watch what you do in their home? They're going to see what you do.
Yeah.
What
it's-
are you doing? Yeah.
So just be aware.
Yes.
I mean, all of this is having a heightened awareness, knowing that, there are people all around you. I guarantee you that in any given day, you most likely have come into contact, whether you know it or not, you've come into contact with a child sexual abuser. It's that common. Teachers, guidance counselors, the people you mentioned, as safe people,
Right.
also have among them
Oh,
people
yeah.
who are not safe.
Exactly.
So just be aware.
And
Talk to
teach.
your kids.
Yes, educate. Just if it doesn't feel right, just tell your child if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. We have that gut instinct that we have all been born with, that when we use it, is pretty on target
Yeah, for
at
sure.
any age. Yeah,
Yeah.
at any age. So
Yeah. And then I would say probably, maybe finally, I mean, we could come up with a lot more of these, but I would say within your organization, whether it's a church, any youth serving organization, camps, all of those must have written policies. A child safety policy that spells out what the boundaries are and what the consequences are for violating those boundaries. That is a must. If you don't know how to develop a policy, consult with somebody who can teach you.
well, there are sample policies online.
There are.
mean,
I'd never recommend to just click
Yeah.
and print, because you have to take ownership in that.
Right. But there are samples to use as guidelines
Yeah.
that are very good, very, very good. But yeah, adapt them to your organization, to your business, to your world, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a must.
What about, and we haven't talked about this, Jimmy, but just before we close, what about guidelines within the home? Boundaries within the home?
Yeah, in the home, I would say just set the example, set a model, teach privacy. In our home, we've talked about this in past podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
past episodes. We never open up a bathroom door and just walk in.
Right.
If a door is closed, we knock on it, even if we think it's empty. And a
Right.
lot of times it
Okay.
is. We'll
Right.
close doors to
Right.
keep
But
cats
that's
out and things like that. But
mm-hmm.
we always knock before entering into a bathroom. Um, we always close the door when we're in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
We
Okay.
don't share bathrooms when we're going to the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom. Just teach them basic privacy. We taught our kids from the time they were very young. Um, I would stay in the home, devices. We have an open door policy where, not just open door, but open room policy, that if you're going to use a device, we're in the living
I
room.
think that's
Devices
crucial.
are,
Crucial.
they're open. Somebody's sitting
Mm-hmm.
beside you. Somebody's always around you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't take your device and retreat to your room, close the door, and
And
hide under a blanket.
right.
You know,
Mm-hmm. I think that's crucial. I was thinking also, like within our home, had I been educated at all, and I had talked to any of you children and said, hey, if either me or your dad ever asks you to do something that doesn't feel right, you need to come and you need to let somebody know, let me know, let somebody know. I'm wondering if education in the home isn't needed also, because
I think
a
it's absolutely
lot
needed.
a lot of abuse happens within the home,
Mm-hmm.
and children don't know what to do with that.
That's
Number
right.
one, will they be believed? Number two, is it me just feeling weird that daddy has me nap with him and he's nude?
Mm-hmm.
That's not
Yep.
good, obviously. Or daddy has me come in while he uses the bathroom, goes to
Mm-hmm.
the bathroom and wants to show me what a boy looks like.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, and I use male because most often the abuse is male, although it's not limited to male. But within the home, that needs to be talked about, and possibly, if it's laid out on the table from young up, possibly the abuser will not try so much stuff at home. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, but
I haven't done
I don't
enough
know.
research to
Yeah.
really know either. But I think of, as you're talking, I think of Nicole Braddock Bromley. Her story's so powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason she was able to tell her mom, the way she tells the story about they were riding in the car, and then
Mm-hmm.
she just, it was on the tip of her tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was like, you know what, I'm going for it. And she
Yeah.
just blurted it
Yeah.
out,
Yeah. And
about her dad was the abuser.
mm-hmm.
And she said her mom pulled the car over. And, her mom was incredibly attentive, believed her
Mm-hmm.
immediately, but they had that relationship.
Right.
It was
And
that
I
relationship where,
it has to be there where you can talk openly,
yeah,
and I think that happens from little up, that we kind of laugh about the bad touch, good touch, all that stuff, but it's important within the home too. There's bad touches that happen
mm-hmm,
also, and kids need to know that they can come and if it's one parent, they can tell the other parent that, hey, daddy touched me in a way that was bad touch.
mm-hmm,
We need to start educating that way
yes,
within the home
yeah,
also,
yeah,
that letting our kids know. And I don't know, it's that touchy thing. Do you want to open that can of worms? Yeah, because it happens
yeah, you have to,
a
yeah,
lot within the home, or with grandparents, or with
mm-hmm,
aunts, uncles, stepbrothers, the whole thing.
yeah,
It happens.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like an onion. There are many, 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 many layers
Mm-hmm.
to keeping people
Yeah.
safe,
Yep.
and you just have to kind of work through all those different layers. And this doesn't happen like you snap your fingers and I'm gonna have a 5-minute talk with my kid and
No.
my kid's gonna be safe. It doesn't work
No.
that way. So
It's
you
a
know,
constant educating like I say, at their age level, and each age level, if you're peeling back another
mm-hmm,
skin of that onion, telling them a little bit more and more,
yep,
and they need to know that they can speak to that parent openly and will be believed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we could go on and on forever and ever. But you guys
Communicate with our kids. We have to.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yep, you kind of get the gist. I think, the reality is we have many, 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 many pedophiles, sex offenders who are all around us, and that's the world we live in. And
It is, sadly.
We have to coexist because we do coexist. And so the best thing we can do is make it as safe as possible for us and our children.
Right.
And I think it can be done. We can do a much better job and constantly be learning and growing and thinking of ways to make ourselves safer.
Be aware too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in
Thank
again to
you.
this episode,
Yes.
and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.